Hello students, welcome to biology class. This video is in continuity with the previous video of chapter Transport in Plants. The objectives that we are covering in this video are types of soil water, absorption and transport of water, and water movement up a plant through xylem. Starting with the topic types of soil water. Soil water is the term for water found in naturally occurring soil. Soil water is also called resic water. There are three main types of soil water: gravitational water, capillary water, hygroscopic water, and these terms are defined based on the function of the water in the soil. First one is gravitational water. Gravitational water is the free water moving through soil by the force of gravity. It is largely found in the macropores of soil, and very little gravitational water is available to plants as it drains rapidly down the water table. Next is capillary water. Capillary water is water held in the micropores of the soil and is the water that composes the soil solution. Capillary water is held in the soil because the surface tension properties of the soil micropores are stronger than the force of gravity. However, as the soil dries out, the pore size increases and gravity starts to turn capillary water into gravitational water, and it moves down. Capillary water is the main water that is available to plants as it is trapped in the soil solution right next to the roots of the plant. Next is hygroscopic water. Hygroscopic water forms a very thin film surrounding soil particles and is generally not available to the plants. This type of soil water is bound so tightly to the soil by adhesion properties that very little of it can be taken up by plant roots. Since hygroscopic water is found on the soil particles and not in the pores, certain types of soils with few pores, example clay, will contain a high percentage of it. In this image, we can see the three types of water: hygroscopic water, capillary water, and gravitational water. Next, coming on to the topic absorption and transport of water. So, the first question is, how do plants absorb water? Plants absorb water with the help of roots. The absorption of minerals and water is more specifically the function of root hairs that are present in millions at the tip of roots. These hairs are thin-walled, slender extensions that increases the surface of absorption. Once the water is absorbed by root hairs, it moves deeper in the root layers via different pathways. In this image, we can see the complete pathway how plants absorb water. Water enters root hair cells by osmosis. This happens when the water potential in the soil surrounding the root is higher than in the cell. Water diffuses from the soil into the root hair down its concentration gradient. As the water enters the cell, its water potential becomes higher than in the cell next to it. So, water moves by osmosis into the next cell. Some amount of water may just seep through the spaces between the cells or through the cell walls. Water vapor evaporating from the leaf creates a kind of suction. Its pressure at the top of the vessels is lower than at the bottom. Water moves up the stem in the xylem. More water is drawn into the leaf from the xylem. This creates a transpiration stream, pulling water up from the root. Mature xylem cells have no cell content, so they act like open-ended tubes, allowing free movement of water through them. Roots also produce a root pressure, forcing water up xylem vessels. Water moves from xylem to enter leaf tissues down water potential gradient. In the leaves, water passes out of the xylem vessels into the surrounding cells. From this image, we can also see how the water enters the root hairs by osmosis. Then water passes from root to cortex, then to endodermis by cell-to-cell osmosis. And then water is drawn up the xylem vessels because the transpiration is constantly removing water from the top of the plant. Coming on to the next topic, absorption and transport by root hairs and root cortex. Due to the presence of various substances like sugar, the concentration of solutes in the cell sap of root hairs is greater than that of the surrounding water. The cells have a lower water potential and hence the water is taken in from the soil. Water can follow three possible pathways to reach the root cortex region and then to the xylem vessels. These are: first one, apoplast pathway. Here, water passes from root hairs to xylem through the walls of intervening cells without crossing any membrane or cytoplasm. The pathway provides the least resistance to movement of water. However, it is interrupted by the presence of impermeable lignosuberin Capillarian strips in the walls of endodermal cells. Next is symplast. Water passes from cell to cell through their protoplasm. It does not enter cell vacuoles. The cytoplasms of the adjacent cells are connected through bridges called the plasmodesmata. For entering into symplast, water has to pass through the plasma lemma, also called cell membrane, at least at one place. It is also called transmembrane pathway. Symplastic movement is aided by cytoplasmic streaming of individual cells. It is, however, slower than apoplastic movements. Next is vacuolar pathway. Water flows from one vacuole to the next through plasma membrane and tonoplast by osmosis. Tonoplast is defined as membrane surrounding the vacuole. Of the three pathways, most of the water moves via the apoplast way. Apoplast pathway is considered to be the most important as it seems to offer the least resistance and results in the mass flow of water through the root cortex as a result of transpiration. This image explains the movement of both the discussed pathway, whereby in apoplast pathway water takes the root from cell wall, and in symplast water moves between cytoplasm and adjacent cells. Next, discussing transport of water from root cortex to the endodermis and to xylem. In the root cortex, the apoplast movement of water occurs without resistance. When water reaches endodermis, the Capillarian strip of the endodermis block this movement of water. Capillarian strip is a waxy layer of suberin present in the lateral cell wall in the form of a band. Suberin, being a waterproof, prevents the flow of water and solutes through it and instead directs water through the endodermal cytoplasm. In this image, we can see the Capillarian strip, that is the waxy layer of suberin that is present in the lateral cell wall in the form of a band that blocks the movement of water. Then water moves through the symplast and again crosses a membrane to reach the cells of xylem. This is the only way water and other solutes can enter the xylem. This way, living cells exercise control over the intake of water and minerals from soil. Endodermis till xylem, the water and solutes pass through the cell membranes called the transmembrane pathway and through the tonoplast, that is the vacuolar pathway. The endodermis with its unique structure controls which solute or ions reach the xylem. Now, once the water reaches root xylem, water is again free to move between cells as well as through them. Water moves upward toward the stem and leaves by transpiration pull. Coming on to the next topic, water movement up a plant through xylem. The water along with dissolved minerals absorbed through the roots is transferred to xylem and from where it reaches all part of plant. The fact that xylem transports the water up has been demonstrated by a number of experiments. Number of theories have been postulated so far to describe the ascent or uptake of sap. These are root pressure theory, capillarity theory, cohesion tension or transpiration pull theory. One by one we will be discussing. Starting with the root pressure theory. Root pressure is the force or the hydrostatic pressure generated in the roots that help in driving the fluids and other ions from the soil in upward directions into the plant's vascular tissue, xylem. This process is produced by osmotic pressure in the cells of the root. During root pressure, water passes through the root tissue freely. In most of the plant, the magnitude of root pressure is about 2 atmospheric pressure. In some plants, it is up to 6 atmospheric pressure, which is sufficient to raise water level up to a few feet. Now, here we are discussing two important terms. One is guttation and second is bleeding. Guttation is the loss of excess water and bleeding is the loss of a cell sap. In guttation, loss of water occurs from hydatodes. Hydatodes are specialized pores present on the leaf margins, exudes drops of water. The exudation of water as drops from tip or margins of leaf is called guttation. Guttation occurs in certain plants such as banana, grass, tomato, etc. In bleeding, loss of sap occurs through cut surface. In bleeding, tissue damage occurs due to cut surface. In guttation, there is no tissue damage occurs. It occurs in all types of plants. Next come capillarity theory. It is given by Boehm in 1809. According to this theory, water is translocated because water molecules adhere to the surfaces of small or capillary tubes. This adhesion causes water to somewhat creep upward along the sides of xylem elements. Hopkins in 1999 explained that the relationship between the rise of water in a capillary tube and the size of the tube is inversely proportional. This means that the thinner is the tube, the higher will be the rise of water. We can compare the glass tube with the xylem vessel. In glass tubes, this upward movement is visible as the curved or crescent-shaped meniscus. However, it was shown that capillarity alone in tubes of similar diameter as that of a xylem element raises water less than 1 meter. Cohesion tension theory, cohesion tension and transpiration pull theory. This theory was proposed by Dickson and Joly in 1894 and is based on the following features. First one, cohesive force. Second, adhesion of water. And third, continuity of the water column. And fourth one, transpiration pull. Cohesive force or tensile strength of water. Cohesion means attraction between similar molecules. The water molecules have a strong mutual attraction, that is, they tend to stick to each other. Due to a strong attraction, the molecules do not separate from one another. The magnitude of cohesive force is about 350 atmospheric pressure, which is more than enough for ascent of sap in tall trees. In this image, we can see the cohesive forces amongst the water molecules. Between the water molecules, hydrogen bond is formed. Next is adhesion of water. Adhesion means attraction between dissimilar molecules. There is a force of attraction between water and lignified cell wall of xylem. Due to this force, water molecules tend to stick to the walls of xylem ducts or xylem vessels. In this image, we can see both the adhesion and cohesion property of water. Adhesion of water molecules to the surface of tracheids. This adhesion of water to the surface of the tracheids pulls water up the tube, and cohesive property amongst the water molecules help it to rise up as a column. Next is continuity of water column. The cohesive and adhesive force do not allow the water column to break or pull away from the walls of xylem. They maintain a continuous water column formed in the xylem duct from roots to the leaves. Xylem vessels are tubular structures which extend from roots to the apex of plant cells. They form a continuous tube. One end of the xylem tube connects with the root hairs via pericycle, endodermis and cortex. The other end connects with the substomatal cavities of leaf via mesophyll cells. The xylem capillaries have water in them. Due to cohesion and adhesion properties of water, the capillaries form a continuous water column. In this image, we can see a continuous water column starting from the roots till the leaves. Next is transpiration pull. The water vapors evaporates from mesophyll cells to the intercellular spaces as a result of active transpiration. The cell sap of mesophyll cells, by losing water, becomes concentrated. Its osmotic pressure increases. As a result, diffusion pressure deficit also increases and the cells absorb water from the adjoining mesophyll cells, then from the vascular bundles. Vascular bundles in return absorb water from xylem elements of the stem. Unbroken continuous water column fills the xylem elements. As a result, a tension or pull generates at the top of the column known as transpiration pull. This tension is transmitted downward from petiole, stem and finally reaches to the root. This results in the upward movement of water. With the help of this image, we can understand absorption of water and conduction through the xylem vessels and the sequence of events during transpiration. First, evaporation of water from the leaf surface reduces the water in cell walls of mesophyll cells. Second, this loss of water lowers the water potential of mesophyll cells, thereby causing them to take up water from adjacent cells which have higher water potential. The water moves from the adjacent cells along the water potential gradient. Now, the water lost from the adjacent cells is replaced by the water moving from the xylem elements of the leaf. The loss of water from xylem creates a negative pressure called tension. Tension causes a decrease in the water potential, which is transmitted down the roots, thereby lifting the water column of the plant. So, from soil to roots, water moves due to difference in water potential. Since water potential of root cells is lower than the water potential of soil, movement of water occurs from soil to the roots. This phenomenon provides a possible explanation of how water is lifted to the tallest trees that occur on earth. Thank you so much. We will continue this chapter in the next video.